before we move to Don, I think we have time for a couple of questions.
The one about the surface of the lake, that was, which text was that from? I know that from somewhere, from Olson.
Hold on. Where's my? I have to go to my journal. I footnoted it. Yeah, it's the place, the thing, and the action. The one that's not published.
I must have run across that.
Yeah.
That same thing at some point, like.
Maybe somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in Olson's stuff when I worked with all those papers before they put them in folders.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, we have it.
So, thinking about this body as a house in English, I started to think about some terms in other languages, corpus, and then relating that by extension, or physios, relating that to anthropos, and then oikos as house, as root of ecology. Thinking about the relationship then between, in terms of Olson's interdisciplinarity, what is the relationship between physiology, anthropology, and then ecology? Anthropology, physiology is an ecology.
Yes.
My question is about proprioception and its relationship to interoception and exteroception. And I want to know, because I've really tried to piece this out and I can't figure it out. It's a complicated question because on the one hand, there's the official sense of those terms as they've developed historically, but then there's Olson's sense of those terms, which is what you were getting at. Yeah. And so I wonder how you see Olson's sense of proprioception in relation to these two terms. Does it negotiate between these two terms? Does it belong more to one of these two terms than the other? Or does it make a nonsense of the distinction between interoception and exteroception?
Give me a definition of interoception.
Well, the official one or Olson's?
The official one.
You know, as I understand it, interoception relates to the body's internal sense of relationship. Exteroception relates to the body's sense of the phenomenal world beyond the body. And so then I wonder how proprioception, one's own sense, fits into that. You know, where does own stop?
The way, and this goes a little bit into body-mind centering, but I think that synesthesia, and maybe, you know, the essay needs to be tweaked from your question, because you're making me think that synesthesia might in fact have aspects of it that are intero and extero. So, but proprioception has to do with this movement piece. You know, because I think you can just lie on the floor flat and intero, extero. But in order to propriocept, you have to move. It doesn't work. Because, I mean, proprioception, you know, in the anatomy books is, you know, one's sense of where you are in space. And you can probably, from experience, lie on the floor and feel that. But you have to have moved. You have to have moved in order to know where you are not moving.
And to move, you have to move in space.
Yes.
There's nowhere else to move.
And there's something, what connects to me, you know, about Olson is that there is something, even in his writing, that it's grasping, it's, you know, it's
Dancing, sitting down.
What?
Dancing, sitting down.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting for somebody to actually figure out how precisely his understanding of proprioception was. In relationship to the history of body-mind issues, what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon is the fact that it's this Jungian heresy, where he places the archetypes inside the body cave. He has an explicit, whole complicated relationship to Jung, but the whole idea is that he abuses the idea of the archetypes by saying the organs are the archetypes. You know, I'll go on about that later.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about, you know, it's like we should do a book. I mean, you know, this you know, there's so much of it.
There's also Lawrence's book,
Fantasia, the unconscious.
which is a kind of mediating space between Jung and Freud. That was Olson's favorite book on that subject.
Well, and the other dimension of that is that I've never followed out adequately to really be able to talk about, but is the section in Whitehead's Process and Reality on the intensive continuum. and a lot of Olson's language around these issues come out of that very difficult and obscure part of the process in reality as well.
And another piece of it is the secret of the golden flower, which is very, very peculiar because it's a kind of Jungianization of the Chinese system, which is much more like the actual Chinese system
Right,
that
but
the
the
golden
word
flower
is-
abuses is much more like what Olson meant than the Jungianization of it.
Yeah, incredibly important research. I think it's really, really an important paper that you put together, and both of you, I mean, in terms of this work. It's really crucial and very exciting. And it's interesting because I've just been recently doing some work with a choreographer that you studied with, Simone Forti, and I'm publishing a book of hers, republishing it, and she's probably one of the truly great innovators in terms of body motion in dance. And she was one of the founders of the Judson Church with Yvonne Rainer and Steve Paxton and all these people. Well, so we did this book, and I took her texts and I assembled them, and we couldn't come up with a title. And suddenly, out of the blue, she came up with this title, "O Tongue." And this led to, I published the book, and I couldn't figure out how the title related to the book. And then I started digging into Olson, and I started digging into Nietzsche and all these sorts of things. And I found this very interesting quote by Novalis, "The seat of the soul is where the inside and outside meet." And this is very interesting. I mean, I think that what you've done is you've created a kind of foundation to talk about the physicality of the body and its movement and the way that memory registers in the body, whether it's in the unconscious or the conscious or the preconscious. But the thing that I think would be interesting to add to that would be the tongue and the world. And this, Simone has a piece titled "Body, Mind, Word." And I think that this, we can talk about it after the other panelists go, but the tongue, muthos, the mouth, language, speech, these are all coming from the body. And if Novalis is right, and I think it's a very profound insight, and I don't even know where it came from because it was quoted in another book, but the tongue is the place where the inside and outside meet in terms of human culture, human civilization, all of this. So actually, speech is the most profound expression of the body. And this is the place where we begin to connect to the world, not only through the haptic, through the contact, I mean, your opening example was incredible. I was like worried about falling over, and I'm like sitting there, and suddenly I'm understanding society and the polis and everything through the body. But I think the mouth and the speech, to think about speech and the power of speech as a form of action, is crucial to not allow ourselves to become behavioristic and to become, in other words, speech is the beginning of history. Speech is the beginning of human society, contact, and polis. Speech is very important. So I would just say, on top of this incredibly important foundational work you've done, I mean, there's a whole bunch of really innovative ideas there, to maybe consider the possibility that the mouth, muthos, logos, all of this from Olson, is a big step on top of that. So,
yeah, I was thinking of the initial exercise that reminded me of the square dance or many other folk dances, and something which is central, I think, to the polis in ways for people to communicate physically as well as emotionally and artistically. So that's kind of interesting. I also was I was wondering if Olson had read anything about the Alexander technique, which John Dewey
and I
had.
love that, there's so much.
John Dewey had written about
Yeah.
and so forth. And then lastly, I was thinking about Richard
Wait,
Heisman.
one second,
Yes.
didn't you read Mabel Todd?